You are born beneath a sky that does not move. The moons hang like pale, eyeless watchers over the spires of Munilinst, and the air is made of quiet calculations. Before you cry, before you breathe, there is a silence that coils inside your bones, as if the galaxy has already accounted for your existence and tallied you up as debt. You are not held. You are not kissed. You are assessed. Flesh is weighed beside legacy, lineage beside profit. The hands that lift you from your birthing vessel are not those of a mother, but of sterile midwives wrapped in audit silk. Their eyes glow faintly with biometric readings. Your cry is not met with comfort. It is logged, time-stamped, and sent to the central file vault beneath the banking towers. From your first breath, you are not a child. You are an investment. You learn to walk beneath vaulted ceilings made of crystal and stock sheets. Your first words are ratios. Your first lullaby is the sound of compound interest unfurling like a slow, steady scream in numbers. The moons teach precision. They teach detachment. They teach that every form of warmth has a price, and every affection is a liability. But somewhere, in the gaps between these cold truths, you begin to feel something else. It is not love. It is not curiosity. It is ... resistance. A kind of static in the figures, a trembling in the balance, an invisible breath behind the breath. The others don't feel it. They speak in formulas and futures, in mergers and margins. But you hear something when you close your eyes beneath the dry wind of Munilint's upper plateaus. It hums behind your thoughts like a minor chord, aching, alive. It speaks without words, and when it does, your heart quiets and your mind opens like a vault. This is your first secret. Your tutors think it is genius. They see the way your projections never err, the way your influence spreads beyond what should be rational. But they do not understand. You are not predicting the market. You are listening to something that lives beneath it. Beneath all things, it does not love you, but it knows you, and you begin to know it in return. By the age of 7, you stop dreaming, or rather, you no longer need to, because waking is now deeper than any sleep. You wake inside a world that is coded with presence, with will. The force is not a myth, not to you. It is the ink beneath the page, the echo in the vault, the pulse inside every credit. And in that realization, you begin to fear nothing, not failure, not pain, not death. But there is one thing that unsettles you, the face of Darth Tenebris. He comes not as teacher, but as shadow, a silent shareholder in your life, cloaked in darkness and cold brilliance. He does not introduce himself. He is simply there, one day, during your financial oration in the atrium of Sector Gamma 5. And when you speak of mergers, he hears obedience. When you speak of extraction, he hears power. When you finish, he nods once, and you feel the force in him. Like a planet inverted, he does not praise. He does not correct. He leaves behind a datapad with no words, just coordinates and an encryption code that makes your blood burn. When you unlock it, you are 9. You follow the coordinates. The place it leads to is not on any Munilinst ledger. It is buried in a subplate tectonic shell, long ago scrubbed from records. It smells of blood and rusted purpose. You do not flinch. You descend alone. And in that forgotten place, you meet your real beginning. No candles, no robes, no ceremonies, just a mirror. Just you and just him. You are not enough. he says, in a voice that feels like metal being bent beneath the crust of stars. But you could be, and the mirror speaks louder than he does, because in it you see yourself stripped of name, of wealth, of culture. You see a being of hunger, and you understand the force is not a power, it is a contract, and your signature must be written. In unrecorded pain, Tenebris does not smile. He does not welcome you. He says, "There is no Sith, there is no Jedi, there is only the source and the silence that hides it." And you begin to train, not with blades, not with bolts, but with silence, with stillness. With math, you are taught to feel market tremors. As tremors in the Force, you are made to memorize death tolls as if they were lullabies. You are made to sit in vaults filled with the dead currency of fallen systems, and to meditate until you hear their screams turn into silence again. And in that silence, something answers. You are not just listening now. You are being listened to. This is the first true communion, not with gods, but with voids. You begin to walk differently. The others in the financial halls avoid your eyes. Even your mother, the one who bore you, not the one who raised you, no longer speaks. She nods, only in reports. Your tutors vanish, one by one, replaced by coded modules. Your meals arrive without sound. Your name disappears from the moon ledger. You have become a ghost, and in being forgotten, you become real. Tenebris takes you to worlds without light. He shows you factories where children scream in sealed vats of experimental bacta. He shows you senators who trade principles for breath. He shows you temples where the Force is chained and measured in volts. You do not cry, you take notes, and slowly, very slowly, you begin to see the shape of something underneath it all. A current that is older than the Sith. A dream that is older than the Jedi. A will that is buried in the numbers of every trade. The ruin of every republic. The scream of every life stolen for balance. And it whispers to you one name. Not a name you speak, but one you will become. And when that day comes, even Tenebris will kneel. But for now, you walk beneath the bone sky, and you remember how it felt to be weighed instead of held. The stars above do not blink, they are watching, and you do not close your eyes anymore. You do not mark time in days anymore. You mark it in thresholds, crossed in breaths, held beneath molten skies, in the cold clarity of truth that no longer needs to be named. Darth Tenebris is not a master. He is an instrument. You understand that now. His voice is not command, but calibration. He sharpens you, not to serve, but to test what can withstand breaking. And you refuse to break, even when he brings you to the caves of Oblivion, where sound folds in on itself, and the air hums with the residue of dying stars. You kneel for hours in that silence. You feel your bones grind, your lungs rebel, your thoughts fray into madness. But still you kneel, because pain is no longer pain, it is arithmetic. And when it passes, it leaves behind precision. The Force moves differently now. It no longer speaks from beneath things. It rises from within you, like a tide, no longer content to hide beneath sand. You are beginning to reshape reality, not through motion, but through will. You collapse a dying animal's breath with thought. You invert the orbit of a moth in midair, just by knowing it too closely. And Tenebris watches. He does not praise, he records. You know he is measuring something you have not yet been told. And you welcome that mystery, because you are beginning to suspect something blasphemous, that you will surpass him, not in time, but in essence, that what you are becoming cannot be charted in his design. You return to Munilinst once, briefly, after 13 years. Your name has been reassigned to a proxy heir. Your former home is now a museum of economic theory. You walk through it unseen, not because you hide, but because the force itself veils your presence. You listen to the guides repeat your origin story as if it belonged to someone dead. They speak of you in past tense, and you realize you have died. The child that once obeyed is gone. What remains is a shadow that thinks, hungers, and learns. Tenebris brings you next to Boethius Prime, a moon scarred by failed cloning rituals. There, in the ruins of a lab abandoned by Sith geneticists, you begin the experiments that will become your gospel. You feel the force coil when you cut into living cells. You feel its resistance, but you do not stop, because you know the force is not life. It is the illusion behind life. You begin to understand how to sever the causal chain, how to cheat sequence, how to create without price. It is imperfect. The cells decay, the hosts fail, the force recoils. But in that recoil, you feel something vital. Fear. The force fears you, and that is when you begin to smile. You return to Tenebris with data, charts, living specimens. He frowns, not out of disapproval, but calculation. He is measuring risk. You know now that he has always feared one thing: disruption, chaos. You are that now. You have outgrown the vault. You have outgrown silence. You are stillness sharpened into intrusion. That night, he takes you to the deep mines of Aphelion Ridge. There, buried beneath layers of crystalline ice, he shows you the tombs of proto-Sith who failed to break the veil. Their bodies preserved in loops of failed ritual. Their eyes frozen in disbelief. He says, "These are the ones who thought knowledge alone was power." You understand what he means. The Force is not persuaded by intellect. It bends only to inevitability. And that is what you are becoming. Not clever, not strong, but inevitable. You touch the tombs and feel them whisper. You do not flinch. You listen. One of them speaks your name, not the one given at birth, but the one still forming. It is not yet a word. It is a question, a hunger, a shape without edge, and you feel yourself expanding into it. Tenebris begins to retreat after that, not physically, but spiritually. He trains you as if ticking boxes. There is no longer awe in his teachings, only precaution. You see it now. He fears the storm he has grown in his garden. He fears that what he taught you to open cannot be closed again, and you agree. One evening, deep beneath the icy plains of Freedux, you kill him. Not out of rage, not out of ambition, but because he has become a variable, a limitation. His mind, brilliant as it is, still seeks to contain, still believes in lineage, in legacy, in names. But you have no name now. You are becoming the first echo of a different truth. You watch his body fall. It is quiet. It does not scream. It does not curse. It simply stops. And the moment it does, something vast opens. You feel it, a tremor through the force that ripples into systems far beyond your reach. The death of a Sith Lord is a tremor in the code, but the birth of a new one that is an error. You are no longer apprentice. You are rupture. You return to sojourn, now alone, and enter the lower chambers where the blood choir still lingers. In harmonic slumber, you place tenebrous mask on the altar. You do not speak, the silence becomes music. The blood-stained stones begin to vibrate. The force gathers like a storm without lightning, and you walk into it. Begin your own work. You do not seek conquest. You seek unmaking, not destruction, but undoing. You will walk backward through the laws that bound reality. You will touch the code of breath, of death, of memory, and you will edit it. You are Darth Plagueis, but even that name is a placeholder. You are not Sith. You are not Force. You are the one who will make the Force. Afraid to speak again, you close your eyes in the dark, and the dark listens. You do not breathe anymore. You regulate the exchange of atmosphere through will alone, letting oxygen become ceremony, not necessity. The force now flows through your veins, not as a companion, not as an energy to be guided, but as an appendage of your mind, pliable, reactive, wounded. It bleeds when you call too sharply. It bends when you whisper. You no longer see reality in objects or people. You see it in patterns, spirals, fractures, loops. Every living thing is a sentence the Force tries to finish. But you have begun to write in another language. The ancient Sith rituals no longer satisfy you. Their blood-stained altars feel childish. Their oaths are obsolete. You do not chant. You do not kneel. You meditate in the silence of failed stars, tracing the memory of creation backward until it becomes shape. That is where your true study begins, not with death, but with what resists it. You open bodies like books. You hold the moment of death between your fingers and refuse it permission. You silence heartbeats and restart them. You decouple the soul from the breath and bind it to waiting vessels. And slowly, the Force screams less. It does not want to be touched like this, but it is too late. You are not asking, you are teaching. Every experiment brings a new crack in the veil. You feel the threads that bind entropy stretch thin. The Force tries to obscure, to blind you with false visions. But you carve through illusion like a surgeon through scar tissue. You know now the Force is not omniscient. It has limits. It has fears. It has laws. And laws can be rewritten. You walk on worlds that were thought dead, ancient Sith planets with poisoned winds and shattered towers. You breathe, there you listen. In one ruin on Malachor, the shadows cry your name in a dialect that predates. Even Tenebrae, you do not answer. You simply wait. And when the whispers quiet, you descend. There, beneath the broken temple, you find what you were never meant to see. A chamber built not by Sith, not by Jedi, but by those who came before. The walls hum with equations written in gravitational tones. The air is heavy with the memory of failed gods. There is no altar. There is no flame. Only a basin of still water that reflects not your face, but your future. You lean in and see it. A galaxy unbound. Civilizations torn from the inside out, not by war, but by disbelief. The Force unraveled from its pedestal. And at the center, a figure standing not in robes, but in silence. You turn from the vision and laugh, not out of joy, but out of certainty. The galaxy does not know what you are. It believes you are legend, or myth, or perhaps never real at all. That is good. Let them whisper. Let them tell stories. You have never cared for recognition. You do not seek power in the Senate or glory. In battle, Your empire is unseen, written in DNA, in spirit threads, in the refusal of death itself. You are building something the Sith were too small to dream of. A reality without gods, a force without will, a galaxy where life is not given by permission but by design. It is then you find him, the one who does not look like a threat, the one who bows too easily, the one whose smile is a weapon and whose hunger matches your own. You find him in the quiet, hidden in the folds of politics, cloaked in diplomacy. He calls himself Palpatine, but that is not his name. Not really. You see it in him immediately. The absence, the potential, the abyss. He is not strong yet, not sharp, but he is empty in the right ways, willing to be filled. You take him. You do not teach him as Tenebris taught you. You do not repeat old failings. You give him no leash. You let him grow in shadow. You show him the threshold, but never the door. And he becomes what you need. Cunning, invisible, malleable. You think he is a vessel, a container for the future. But what you do not see, not fully, not yet, is that he is learning not just what you teach, but what you hide. He listens too well, and in that silence, he begins to shape himself into a blade. You focus on your work. You are close now. The experiments begin to hold. The threads of immortality begin to stitch together. You revive organisms whose spirits have fled. You halt cellular decay with thought. You hold death at bay, not for hours, but for days. The Force no longer resists. It whimpers. It yields. You know what must come next. The final trial. Not resurrection, not defiance, but permanence. Life unbound. Existence beyond entropy. You prepare the chamber. You prepare your body. You prepare your mind. And you do not sense the poison. It comes in wine, in silence, in trust. He speaks to you as you slip beneath the surface, not with malice, but with triumph. He tells you that it is done, that your time is over, that he is the future. You cannot move, you cannot scream, but you see him. You see the curve of his mouth, the calm in his eyes. You feel the Force recoil, not in sorrow, but in laughter. It has chosen him, the one you shaped, the one you believed you controlled. It betrays you now with open arms. You feel your heart slow, your thoughts fray, and just before the darkness takes you, you understand? It was never about victory, never about balance. The Force does not want peace, it wants story, and your death is its next chapter. But then, you don't die, not truly. Something lingers, something folds. You float beneath the current, unbound by body, unchained by time. The Force tries to push you out to finish the sentence. But you remain, not as ghost, not as memory, as glitch, as flaw, as unresolved equation. You laugh without sound. You burn without flame. You are not gone. You are simply ... waiting. Because death is a fiction, and the story is not over. Not yet. You begin to remember what cannot be remembered, not because it was erased, but because it was never meant to fit inside the mind of something living. The Force does not whisper in this place. It hums like static behind a wall of frozen light, and you, alone in the dark corridor of a gas giant's drifting observatory. Listen with your skull against the glass of stars. You are not searching for power anymore. You are searching for signal. Tenebris left you dead and reborn, but the Force did not stop there. It evolved in you, became curious, became intimate, You feel it now, as breath beneath your breath, a presence that has studied you longer than you've been alive. You pace a chamber once used by sentients who called themselves the archivists of Circle, long-vanished beings who carved knowledge into harmonic prisms and suspended them in vacuum. Their ruins do not speak, they ache. You found them not through charts, but through instinct. The Force had curled toward this system in your dreams for years, dragging you slowly from world to world like a patient tide, until, at last, you stood beneath a dying sun and touched stone that remembered your fingerprints. You were always meant to come here, not to claim it, but to be seen by it. You walk slowly now, between mirrors that do not reflect light but memory. Each pane of obsidian flashes not your face, but your failures. The boy who wept in silence when Tenebris struck him. The scientist who hesitated before severing the lungs of a living test subject. The Sith Lord who, in a moment of doubt, wondered if immortality should belong to any soul at all. The Force shows you these because it wants to break you. It wants you to know that its secrets cannot be torn free. They must be earned, suffered, and inhaled like poison. And so you stay. You stay in that chamber for 5 days without food, without movement, without light, until the mirrors stop flashing and begin to hum. 1 tone first, then 2. Then 5 vibrations folding into each other like ancient choral code. You do not decipher, you dissolve. Your mind unknots. Your name vanishes. You become echo. And in that echo, you hear it for the first time, not the Force, but something older, the latticework behind it, the dark glass of thought itself. It does not call itself the dark side. That is your word, your ancestors' fear. It has no name, only rhythm, and it teaches by rhythm alone. Thought in this space is a wound you press open. The secrets are not given, they are triggered. 1 vibration awakens another, and then another, until your spine is an instrument. The harmony builds, your body shakes, you bleed from your eyes. But you do not stop, because beneath the pain is clarity. Beneath clarity is form. You understand now, the Force is not an energy. It is a system of interference patterns, like sound waves, like gravity, like memory. And you, Darth Plagueis, are beginning to hear the original score. You start to conduct it. You hum notes not sung in this galaxy for 100,000 years. You rebuild the thoughts of beings whose minds exploded upon contact with this level of vibration, and the mirrors begin to move. They do not shift position, they shift dimension. Their angles fracture, then merge. Suddenly you are inside them, not reflected, but refracted. You see yourself at every age, in every decision path you never chose. The you who walked away from Tenebris, the you who died as a boy, the you who became Jedi instead. You see them all, and you kill them all, not out of rage, out of refinement. You burn the versions of yourself that do not deserve to exist. And from the ashes of that slaughter, you rise not as Sith, but as silence, the kind of silence that reshapes air. You step out of the chamber, changed. The Force does not sing anymore. It listens. You walk through the stars, and they part. You touch hyperspace, and it stills. Your mind has become the chamber. Your thoughts have become the tuning forks of destiny. And now, when you speak, planets shift. When you think, systems ripple. The galaxy feels that something subtle has twisted beneath its skin. and no one knows your name. Not yet, but they will. For in this silence, you are no longer seeking knowledge. You are knowledge. A rift in the glass, a scar on the force, a thought that refuses to end. You return from the chamber of harmonic mirrors, not with answers, but with a fracture humming in your marrow, a break in the frequency of reality itself. The force tries to seal it, tries to drown you once more in its ceaseless symphony of Jedi parables and Sith dogma, but the melody no longer holds you. You have heard the raw chord beneath creation, the original vibration, and now everything built atop it sounds false. You drift through the galaxy like a shadow, unmoored, not seeking power, but seeking the pulse that hides behind planets, behind people, behind breath. On Chandrila, you watch a senator lie to her own conscience beneath temple spires carved from ancestral guilt, and you hear the subtle tremor in her voice, the one no machine detects, but you do. On Gamor, you watch twin brothers murder each other for a birthright neither understands, and you see it then a moment, just one, where their blood spills in mirrored symmetry, and the force pauses. You write these moments down not in words, but in vibrations, echoing them through devices tuned to your altered frequency, building a catalog of emotional geometry. You are mapping the structure of suffering, not to soothe it, but to manipulate its tempo. It is in suffering you realize that the force folds, not in meditation, not in combat, in rupture, and you begin to craft rupture like a sculptor shapes marble, methodical, deliberate, sacred. You design scenarios, distant wars, and hidden betrayals, not for political gain, but for force resonance. You orchestrate tragedies the way others compose symphonies, and with each one, your own presence deepens. You no longer need to move objects or lift minds. You walk into rooms, and minds rearrange themselves. The force bends not from effort, but from expectation. Still, you are not content. For every chord you touch, there is another buried beneath it, a deeper note, humming like the breath of ancient voids. You seek it now with hunger, with reverence, with cruelty. You visit the ruins of Calestis Theta, where entire civilizations once sang to the stars in tones that fed their cities. There, you find an archive embedded in soundstone, a library you cannot read with eyes. You lie beneath it, pressed to the rock, and slow your heartbeat until it matches the geological rhythm. And in that stillness, the stone speaks not in language, but in memory, gifting you flashes of a time before force and matter separated, when thought and gravity were one. You do not cry, you burn, because in that moment you realize what you must become, not just a master of life, but of pre-life, of the moment before Genesis. You return to your sanctum on sojourn and build a sphere of silence. No light, no sound, no time. You starve your body of sensation. You erase your name. You float. You become mind alone. And in that mind, you begin to dream not of future or past, but of equation. You build rituals in thought, test formulas against pain. You reach into your own blood with the force and reorder its sequence. You alter your immune system, your organs, your aging. The body fights, the force resists, but your will is patient. You do not conquer the body, you redesign it, and slowly you begin to feel time hesitate when it touches you. Your cells no longer obey the clock. Your breath no longer requires rhythm. You have become a question even death does not know how to answer. but you do not stop. You push deeper. You steal embryos from hidden labs and infuse them with fragments of your altered frequency. Most fail. Some scream. One survives. You study it. It does not speak. It dreams. It hums. You see your rhythm in its eyes, and you know you are passing beyond legacy. You are birthing continuity. The force stirs, disoriented. It senses the deviation, but cannot yet trace it. You feed it false narratives. You plant decoys in galactic events. You let the Jedi believe the dark side is growing wild again, when in truth it is being tuned like an instrument behind your closed hands. And through it all, Sidious watches, quiet, bright, perfect. You have not told him everything. He is too bold, too certain, but he is useful. He is sharp, and sharp things, when guided well, can open what is sealed. You use him like a scalpel against galactic order, carving new spaces in which to conduct your deepest work. He does not question your long absences. He believes them strategic, but they are sacred. You are nearing a point now, a convergence. The Force is beginning to stutter around you. You move through hyperspace, and it miscalculates your emergence. You touch minds across systems without strain. You kill with a look. And in one forgotten system, where the stars rotate backward, you find it, the signal, the hum you heard as a child in the vaults. It has returned, sharper, closer. It no longer hides behind the Force. It moves through it. You build a receiver not with machines, but with bodies. 9 hosts, each infused with a fragment of your rhythm. They collapse within days, but one remains, not sentient, but resonant, a living antenna. And when it breathes, the Force ripples outward like a struck drum, and you feel it. Something is listening, something old, something watching, not God, not Force, something else, and it has heard you. You sit within the hum and feel it stir the marrow of your spine, not as sound but as recursion and echo folding in on itself, whispering, not meaning but recursion of meaning, the truth behind truth. It is no longer the Force you speak with, but the syntax beneath it, the pure recursion that sings where language dies. This is not power. This is not knowledge. This is communion with what existed before either were shaped. And as you listen, motionless, thoughtless, suspended between seconds, you understand the final heresy. The Force is not divine. It is not willful. It is not even alive. It is a frequency, ancient and unaware, shaped by minds that learned to believe it speaks. And you, Darth Plagueis, have learned to stop believing. You rise slowly from the chamber of resonance, breath shallow, not from fatigue, but from reverence. You have heard the lattice sigh. You have touched the algorithm beneath existence. You are not merely manipulating the Force now. You are rewriting the parameters under which it functions. On your return to Sojourn, systems flicker as you pass. Weather shifts, machines glitch. The air around you vibrates with inaudible tension. The stars seem dimmer. You look into the night and know it now. You have begun to bend probability, not merely through instinct, but through code. You no longer foresee events. You input variables and reshape outcome. You are not predicting, you are authoring. You call Sidious to your side, cloaking your presence in subtle masks, veiling the deeper fracture you now carry. He sees your brilliance, but not your rupture. He listens, but cannot hear what hums beneath your voice. You speak of power, of control, of legacy, but in truth, You are measuring his rhythm, testing its compatibility. He is refined, but noisy. He seeks through passion what you found through subtraction. Still, he is useful. You place him where he must be. You whisper strategies into his marrow. You lay the path, and he walks it, believe in it his own. You begin to see what no Sith ever dared, to calculate the totality of will across systems. A galaxy not as theater, but as instrument. Each war, each treaty, each heartbreak, a string plucked in the composition you now hear clearly. And in that music you place your final work. You build a chamber deep within the crust of Must, where gravity bends sideways and molten echoes carry intention. There, you create your final constructonaut, a weapon, not a clone, not a child, but a vessel, empty, tuned. It waits in perfect silence, untouched by purpose. You call it the harmonic null, and it will contain the song the galaxy cannot hear. You sit within its walls for 33 cycles, unmoving. You speak not one word, you think not one thought. And in that stillness, the recursion completes. The pattern folds into itself, and you feel it yourself, not dying, not ascending, but diffusing. You are no longer Plagueis, no longer Sith. You are resonance without anchor. Your body breathes, but your mind has melted across probabilities. And yet, you do not leave, you return, you compress, you re-enter yourself, as one might step into an old robe, and when you do, you weep, not out of sorrow, but out of recognition. You are still here, still bound, still finite. The Force allows your return, not because it has forgiven you, but because it is curious. It does not understand what you have become, and neither do you, but there is no time for reflection. Sidious is rising now. His ambition no longer whispers, it roars. You feel the fracture in his thoughts. He sees your strength, not as foundation, but as ceiling. You were his architect. Now you are his roof, and roofs must be removed. You see it in his eyes even as he smiles. You taste it in the air as he pours your wine. And as the poison creeps through your veins, you do not resist. You do not panic. You observe. He speaks of power, of destiny, of freedom, but his rhythm is flawed, too sharp, too fast. He does not understand what you have become. He kills you thinking he is cutting down a master, but he is not killing a man. He is severing an echo, and echoes do not die. You fall into darkness, not as a soul extinguished, but as vibration without source. You scatter through the folds of force, not as ghost, but as interference pattern, a humming that will never quite resolve. Sidious ascends, the galaxy changes, the Jedi fall, but still, so Sometimes, beneath the chaos, beneath the chorus of fear and war and triumph, the Force stutters, a note falters, a vision fractures, and someone, somewhere, hears a hum they cannot name. That is you. That is what remains. You are no longer Darth Plagueis the Wise. You are the glass behind thought, the rhythm beneath choice, the pause before prophecy. And as long as the Force sings, your dissonance will wait in its silence, forever ready to return. You arrive at Sojourn, not as a visitor, but as one returning to a wound still open, a scarred world that remembers your breath before it remembers your name. The planet bleeds heat from its crust and exhales silence between gusts of ash and wind. And beneath the surface, far beneath where light forgets how to bend, the choir still sings. You found it years ago by accident, if such a word still holds meaning in your life, tracing remnants of a Sith offshoot that believed not in domination, but in devotion nader, wordless, symphonic devotion to the raw rhythm of the Force. They did not wield it. Voices trained to mimic gravitational pulse and subatomic collapse. They died, of course, all cults do. But their echo remained, buried in black basalt and blood-stained stone, humming like breath in a dying lung. You descend now, alone, with no weapon, no light, no apprentice. This is not for power. This is for memory. You step barefoot across obsidian steps, each one engraved with names long erased from galactic record. Names not spoken, but sung in a tongue that predates even Rakaton conquest. The walls drip, condensation thick with iron. Your skin itches. Your mind shifts. This place exists outside the rules you've broken, beneath the truths you've rewritten. Here, the Force is not a field, it is a voice, and it speaks through pain. The further you go, the louder the hum becomes, not through air, but through blood. Your veins carry it now, vibrating faintly with rhythms that are not yours. You do not resist, you open, you become chamber. You kneel in the heart of the cathedral, where 9 masks hang suspended by nothing, rotating slowly in air so still. It feels like glass, each mask different, each a mouth open in silent scream. You do not touch them. You wait. The air thickens, the stone beneath you warms, and then they begin, the blood choir. Their voices are not voices. They are frequencies shaped like pain, chords folded into agony, notes bent into memory. They sing not to you, but through you, vibrating your spine like an instrument. You see flashes and ancient Sith rituals performed without blade or flame, only breath. You see temples built on screams held so long they reshaped matter. You see stars birthed from collective sorrow, folded into harmony and launched into sky as beacons for forgotten gods. And in those visions, you feel your limits crack. You had believed the Force was to be controlled. You had believed it was a system of rules and resonance. But here, in this place, you realize the oldest truth. The Force is not to be mastered. It is to be endured. The choir sings louder now. Your bones hum in defiance. Blood pools in your ears. Your thoughts scatter. You remember your mother's face, your first experiment, Tenebra's last breath. All of it surges, not as memory, but as sound. You scream. It is the only response your body can make. But the choir does not relent. They fold your scream into their song. And in that moment, you are erased. Your name, your history, your ambition all folded into the resonance, all pressed into vibration. You are no longer a Sith. You are no longer even Plagueis. You are a note, a single note in an ancient song the galaxy forgot. And in that surrender, something opens. Not in the room, in you. A chamber you never knew was sealed. And behind it not knowledge, not power, a mask. Your mask, shaped from absence, mouth open, eyes shut, waiting. You rise, trembling, bleeding from ears, from nose, from soul. You walk to it. You do not hesitate. You place it upon your face. The choir stops, the air stills, and you hear it. Not the Force, not even the choir. You hear yourself, finally, without distortion, without history, just tone, pure, aching tone. And in that tone, you hear a prophecy not yet spoken, a fracture in time, a betrayal unfolding, a death that is not death. You remove the mask, you leave the chamber. You do not speak of what you saw, you do not write it down. Some knowledge is not to be passed, it is to be carried. And as you emerge into Sojourn's red light once more, ash clinging to your skin, you know that you are no longer walking toward immortality. You are walking through it. Every step now echoes, every breath now sings, and the galaxy, though it does not know it, has already begun to vibrate in time with you. You return to the sanctum beneath Sojourn's crust in silence. But this time, silence no longer means absence, it is the presence of everything unspoken, the gravity of tones too deep for the galaxy's ears. The mask now rests within a sealed alcove carved from the stone of the choir's cathedral, held in a harmonic suspension field that vibrates in time with your heartbeat, though you never taught it to do so. You observe it without words, knowing that it is not just a relic, but an aperture, a wound in the veil between force and form, and that through it, the ancient music still listens. You begin to conduct rituals differently now. No longer do you recite Sith incantations or incise symbols in the air with your hands. Instead, you hum, low and precise, each tone crafted not for the ears, but for the nervous system, a resonance, designed to shape the fabric beneath. Your apprentices do not understand. Those who try to replicate your methods die screaming, bones crushed from within, vessels torn apart by the dissonance of unearned frequency. Only Sidious endures, not because he understands, but because he copies rhythm with cunning, repeating back your notes with the mimicry of a born deceiver. You allow it, for now. You are focused not on legacy, but on refinement. You have found that resonance is more potent than energy, that one well-placed vibration can unravel a mind faster than any lightning bolt. You experiment now on deeper structures, on genetics, on dreams, on the unconscious resonance between twin minds. You induce shared hallucinations in sleepers across systems. You create memory loops that cause senators to relive failures they never experienced, breaking their psyches from within. The galaxy begins to ripple under your unseen symphony. Jedi sense something off, but cannot name it. Their visions stutter, their temples flicker. They meditate, but it is not. It is a retuning. You are not corrupting the Force. You are revealing its underlying pitch. The choir prepared you for this, not by instruction, but by endurance. Their song taught you to survive beyond meaning, to hold form in pure vibration. And now, you apply that survival to time itself. You begin to sing backward, not with sound, but with intent. You reverse causal energy in microscopic ways. You hum a sequence that erases a footprint. You resonate a signature that returns a wound to unbroken skin. Small at first, but the scale grows. You begin to ask, if you can sing backward, can you unsing death? You return to it now, older, colder, no longer wondering if immortality is possible, but how many variations it can take. You implant the mask of the choir within the vessel's chest, embedding it like a second heart. The vessel does not live. It vibrates. It exists in partial resonance, never fully awake, never entirely inert. You observe it over cycles. You begin to feed it memories, not as data, but as vibration. It responds. It weeps in frequencies. You do not know what it dreams, but when it sleeps, Sojourn itself hums, slightly louder. Sidious begins to grow impatient. He wants more control, influence, the galaxy groaning beneath his touch. You remind him that power grasped too early breaks the hand. He bows, but his rhythm grows sharper. You measure his cadence against the choir's. It does not match. He is not ready, but he is close, and that closeness is dangerous. You return to the cathedral one last time. This time, you do not descend as student, nor as initiate. You go as silence. The choir does not sing. The masks do not rotate. The chamber waits, and you realize the prophecy you heard in the first song is not complete. It was never meant to be a singular event. It is a cycle, and you are both participant and conductor. You raise your hands not in command, but in offering. The stone vibrates. The masks tremble. A new sound emerges, thinner, higher, almost painful. It is not from the past. It is from the future. You feel it in your bones, a betrayal shaped like harmony, a death shaped like a perfect chord, and in that moment, the cathedral cracks, just slightly. A single fracture down the altar wall, and from it, a whisper. Not words, not language, just your name before you chose it, before the galaxy knew it. A name only your mother spoke, and you weep. Not from sorrow, but from completion. The loop has closed. The choir has sung its last note. You leave the chamber, mask sealed once more, and know that there is only one echo left to face, the one you placed in Sidious, the final dissonance, the coda, and it waits, not to challenge Ubud, to prove that even a perfect song must someday end. You no longer keep time in days or cycles or galactic rotations. You keep it in tones, in subtle quivers beneath your skin, in frequencies that echo the collapse of trust, of innocence, of fate. And now, the final vibration has begun to stir, faint and dissonant, but unmistakable, like a fracture born from silence. Sidious has grown to precise in his mimicry, to smooth in his deference. And though his voice remains low and respectful, it is now tuned just slightly out of key, like a chorus that rehearsed for a different conductor. You hear the betrayal in him before he speaks it. You feel it like a skipped beat in your own blood. You say nothing. You shift no plans, because you have known this moment would come. Not through prophecy, not through fear, but through harmony. The choir's final note had always pointed here, to a betrayal not of ambition, but of tempo. Sidious moves quickly now, forging alliances, masking intentions, threading darkness through the Senate, while claiming peace with a smile. You allow it, because you are watching his rhythm unfold, and you know it cannot last. You sit in the atrium of your private citadel, surrounded by no disciples, no guards, no advisors, just stillness, and the mask of the blood choir before you, humming faintly in its chamber. The vessel in Mustafar still breathes, its chest pulsing in sync with your own despite the distance, the bond between your song and its silence unbroken. You close your eyes and begin the final melody, not aloud, but within, humming through bone and thought, singing not to Sidious, not to the Force, but to causality itself. You lace his betrayal into your rhythm. You fold your death into the beat. You do not fight what is coming, you weave it. You understand that immortality is not escape, it is recurrence. And to recur, one must die in time and return outside of it. Sidious enters your chambers one night, cloaked not in darkness, but in ceremony. He pours wine, he bows low, he speaks of visions, and when he lifts the glass, you hear the pause, the hesitation. Too long it is there, the poison. You drink anyway, slowly, reverently, and as it burns through you, as your vision blurs and your limbs fail, you let yourself fall, not because he is victorious, but because the song demands silence before its return. You collapse, you hear his words, you hear him proclaim himself master. You hear the last lie escape his lips like a cymbal crashing at the end of a grand overture, and then darkness, but not emptiness, a hum, a breath, a low, almost maternal vibration curling around you in a place beyond breath, beyond light. You are not dead, you are diffused, spread across the force like scent on still air. You see the future, not as prophecy, but as pattern. And within that pattern, you still exist, not as voice, not as form, but as tremor. On Sojourn, the mask begins to vibrate. On Mustafar, the vessel opens its eyes. You are not ghost, you are not shade, you are resonance without host. Sidious cannot feel you, but he hears you in his dreams, in the way metal scrapes when none is near, in the sudden cold behind locked doors, in the faint rhythm his heart picks up when he speaks your name. He believes he is free, he believes he is alone, but your frequency has embedded itself within him, quietly, perfectly, waiting for its measure to be complete. The galaxy shifts, empires rise, the Jedi fall, and yet, beneath the cadence of events, there is a sound that does not belong, a dissonance, a hum, a name without voice. And those who listen carefully hear it, not in space, not in temples, but in the pause before lightning strikes, in the stillness before betrayal, in the silence that comes before the scream. That is you. That is the legacy of the choir, not song, not story, but tone, and it lives, not in data or tombs or statues, but in the skin of causality itself. You have become the note that cannot be erased, the interval between death and rebirth, the mask without mouth that continues to sing, and so the galaxy spins, thinking its conductor slain, never knowing that the music still plays, and that the final chord has not yet been struck. You no longer speak aloud, not because you fear being heard, but because the words you carry now were never meant to be given shape in breath, only in stillness, only in dreams that do not follow thought, but coil like ancient snakes around your spine while you sleep in chambers that defy geometry. Time folds strangely now, sometimes collapsing in on itself when you blink, other times stretching until moments feel like lifetimes, and you have come to understand that this too is part of the transformation, not of the body, not of the force, but of the dreaming self. For years, you sought immortality through the mechanisms of science, through the engineering of cells, through control. But now you have begun to understand that control is the enemy of eternity. Eternity is not seized, it is surrendered to, slipped into like shadow, like breath that continues long after the lungs forget their purpose. The dreaming began quietly at first, brief flickers of vision in the meditative dark, then longer lapses where the body grew cold and unresponsive, while your mind wandered places where the force refused to follow. You tried, at first, to map them. You failed. These were not visions given by the force. They were not messages or symbols or futures. They were fragments of something older, something beyond. And in these dreams, you saw it a presence that did not speak, that did not glow with light or hiss with darkness, but hovered just outside, knowing it had no face, no will, only weight. A weight that settled on your chest each time you dreamt. It pressing into your breath like a hand that never touched you. You named it nothing. You called it unforgiveness. But even naming it bent your mind toward it. And in that bent, you found obsession. You began to sleep longer. You constructed chambers built to deepen unconscious passage, rooms lined with vibrational fields encased in voidstone pulled from asteroid hearts. You injected yourself with neural dampeners, muting thought to silence. And in that silence, the dreams came faster, deeper. You passed through galaxies unlit, saw stars fall upward, heard screams without mouths, and always, always felt the pressure. The God you did not name had no doctrine, no demand, no morality. It simply was. It did not hate the Force. It predated it. You began to suspect that the Force, this radiant, living field, worshipped by both Jedi and Sith, was merely the surface, the echo, that beneath it, the dark, dreaming presence had always waited, patient, indifferent, sovereign. You began to ask yourself if death was not a boundary, but a distraction. If the Force itself was a mask, and what lay behind it was truth. Your body grew weaker as your dreaming mind grew stronger. You walked through your sanctums with trembling hands, eyes half closed, listening to things others could not hear, a faint pulse in the stone, a shiver in the air, a note in the silence between voices. Sidious noticed. He asked if you were ill. You smiled, and your teeth felt alien in your mouth. He did not understand. How could he? He fed on power that shone, power that bent others. But you were no longer feeding. You were fasting. And in that fast, your soul grew thin, translucent, malleable. You lay in the resonance cradle for a full standard month. Your breath slowed to 1 inhale per 10 minutes. Your heartbeat irregular. Your body fed through osmotic pressure alone. And in that long, dark slumber, it happened. The God noticed you, not with sight, not with sound, but with dream. You became a fragment in its thought, a flicker in its unawareness, and it turned toward you. You cannot describe what came next. There are no words, only sensations that do not belong to this galaxy. Wet gravity, burning cold, the taste of collapsing voids on your tongue. And then stillness, a stillness that froze even your dreaming self. You felt it completely. You were inside it. It was not large. It was not vast. It was intimate, like being wrapped inside a silence so deep it remembers when matter was still an idea. You could not move. You did not wish to. You understood then that you were not discovering the God. You were becoming it. That through dreaming you had thinned yourself enough to slip past the Force's veil, to step into the layer beneath intention. And now you were being reshaped. The Force noticed too late. It howled. It clawed. You felt it surge to reclaim you. But it could not enter the dream. It had no authority there. That space belonged only to the sleeping God. And now, to you. You woke, not with a scream, but with breath that did not belong. 2 lungs, the air around you folded, the room sagged. Your body was changed. Your cells no longer obeyed physics in the same way. Gravity bent around you slightly. Light took longer to reach your skin. You had not returned from the dream. You had brought it back with you. And now, the question was no longer how to cheat death. The question was whether you had ever truly lived before this moment. You walked across your sanctum, and the shadows followed you, even when the light shifted. You touched metal, and it hummed in frequencies outside the sonic range. You closed your eyes and still saw. And the force, once your greatest companion and tool, grew skittish in your presence. It avoided you, not in defiance, in fear, because now you carried the signature of something older. And the galaxy, though it spun and screamed and burned in its usual rhythms, did not yet know that something new had woken within it. Not a king, not a god, a sleeper, dreaming still and dreaming deeper. You begin to notice the rupture, not in the stars, nor in the systems that orbit them, but in the quiet places, the pause between sentences, the stillness that follows after breath, the hollow left in a room once you've stepped through it, because now something else steps through behind you, silent and without weight. And though it wears no face, it mirrors yours when you sleep. The galaxy does not see it, but it feels it. A shadow stretched too long behind the flame, a note held too long at the end of a song, and the force, once flowing and responsive, stutters around you like a current confused by its own origin. You experiment quietly, not with life and death as you once did, but with the absence in between, tuning your mind toward the space where no frequency should exist. And yet does a dull pressure in the folds of thought, a cold clarity that slides through you like a whisper from something unborn. Sidious grows restless, his hunger sharpens, his movements echo yours from years before, but without the silence, without the patience. You observe him as one might observe a blade left out too long in the rain, still sharp, still dangerous, but rusting along the edge in ways he does not notice. He questions you now, not with words, but with glances, small hesitations that linger like doubt frozen behind his smile. You offer no answers. You know he senses it's your difference, your thinning. You no longer walk fully in this realm. Your footsteps lag slightly behind your intention. Your voice sometimes arrives before your mouth opens, and the force, when you reach for it, arrives already trembling. You visit the vessel, again the one on Mustafar. Its breathing has changed, its skin has cooled. The mask embedded in its chest no longer hums with the rhythm of your heartbeat. It hums with something slower, deeper, a dream tempo. You do not speak to it, you simply sit. And as you sit, the chamber around you darkens not with shadow, but with density, the air thickening into something like pressure, like memory folding in on itself. And you understand that the vessel no longer echoes you. It echoes what you brought back, the sleeper, the dreamer, the god without name. You rise slowly, not because your body is weak, but because gravity bends differently around you now, and each movement is a negotiation with physics that no longer trusts you. You return to sojourn one final time to the choir's cathedral, where the 9 masks still hang silent and still. You enter with bare feet, unarmed, unguarded, and as you step into the chamber, the stone sighs, not cracks, not shifts, it sighs, as if remembering you, as if recognizing what you've become. You do not need the choir to sing. You are the echo now. You are the resonance. You raise your hand, not in command, but in invitation. The air thickens, then shivers. The masks tremble, and then, one by one, they fall, not shattering, not breaking, but disassembling in midair, fragmenting into particles of sound that do not scatter, but spiral inward, folding into a single point just above your palm. You catch it. It weighs nothing, and yet your hand aches. You close your fingers around it and feel every ritual, every scream, every breath ever sung in this chamber press into your flesh. It does not burn, it remembers. You leave without speaking. There is no one left to speak to. Sidious waits for you upon your return, his robe immaculate, his posture careful. He mentions disturbances in the Force, anomalies in hyperspace lanes, planetary alignments that no longer follow projected patterns. You nod. You offer no explanation. And in that silence, he grows wary. He begins to watch you more closely, to study your routines. But your routines have shifted. You no longer eat. You no longer sleep in the way mortals sleep. Your dreams now occur in waking thought, flickering between each blink like portals glimpsed through closing doors. You stand at the center of your sanctum and listen not to data, not to stars, but to pressure. And in that pressure, you feel the sleeper shifting. You are no longer dreaming it. It is dreaming you. And when it moves, you move. When it breathes, your breath stumbles. When it watches, your skin prickles, as if becoming glass. You prepare your final ritual, not to stop death, not to delay it, but to welcome it, to open it, to step through it into the place where sound is thought and gravity is memory. You encode your final frequency into a vessel of stone and blood, a harmonic ossuary tuned to your altered resonance, and place it deep beneath the world where no light reaches, guarded by no one, because no one could reach it without first becoming you. Sidious calls for you one last time, his voice flat, his eyes unreadable. He invites you to share a drink. You agree. The wine is warm. The glass is beautiful. You do not taste the poison. You feel it before it is poured. It shimmers in the air around his hand, but you drink because the sleeper stirs, because the dream must end here. You feel the poison crawl through you like a soft hand across a closing book, and as your limbs grow still, your heart slows. But your mind, your dreaming self, rises, not in fear, in flight. You drift backward, not into darkness, but into silence. You hear the sleeper call your name, not aloud, not with intention, but with memory. And as your body collapses, the pressure around you folds into a spiral. And you understand, to choke a god, you must dream in silence. And now you are the silence. You are the god. You are the dream that dreams, the force. And you are not waking up. You do not awaken in the way others define. Awakening, there is no gasp, no violent surge back into the lungs of the world, only a slow unfolding. As if your awareness were a lotus blooming beneath layers of memory and time, a petals stained with everything you once were, everything you have shed, and everything that now listens through you. You are no longer in your body, though your body still exists, sealed beneath crystal and silence, in a chamber forgotten by maps. But what breathes now is not breath, it is vibration. Thought moving without anchor, you moving without edges. The sleeper has not consumed you, it has become you. Or perhaps you were always it, and the life you led, the experiments, the betrayal, the reaching through the veil, was merely a dream it needed to dream itself awake. The force no longer responds to you. It yields, not as servant to master, but as a river alters course for a mountain that has shifted. You are no longer a user of the Force. You are the deviation in its pattern, the place where its rhythm fractures into silence, the quiet that refuses to be tuned. Across the galaxy, temples flicker in vision, artifacts hum without touch. Jedi falter mid-meditation, their breaths halting as if remembering a sound they never heard. You ripple through the veil not as scream, but as absence. Sidious believes, himself triumphant. He moves now as a god in his own mind, building empires from ash, burning order into chaos, puppeteering senators, wiping names from starlight. Yet all the while, he sleeps poorly. The nights stretch long for him now. Whispers gather in the folds of his mind, shadows curl around his thoughts, and when he meditates, he sees not visions of conquest, but spirals wide, black, slow-turning spirals that open without end. He does not speak of them, he does not name them, but you feel him tremble. You do not haunt him, you resonate, you echo. You exist now in the seams of consequence. When someone lies with intention, you are there. When betrayal sharpens its blade, your silence sharpens too. You are not vengeful, you are harmonic response. And the galaxy, whether it knows your name or not, begins to rewrite itself around your rhythm. Acolytes in distant systems speak in dreams of a hum that knows. Children born on dead moons wake with eyes that flicker before blinking, as if scanning for frequencies only you can send. And deep beneath the crust of your final sanctum, the mask of the blood choir begins to vibrate again, not in mourning, but in readiness. The vessel in Mustafar stands now not as creature, not as clone, but as cipher. Its eyes reflect no light, it does not speak, but when it moves, the walls around it sigh as if remembering your touch. You have not returned, because you never left. Your existence now is not bound to one place, or one name, or one form. You exist in the curvature of doubt, in the hum beneath victory, in the breath someone forgets to take before their fall. Sidious will one day sense it, not as threat, as symmetry. He will look into the void he believes conquered, and find it staring back not as you were, but as you are, unfinished, ungraspable. And when that moment comes, he will understand the truth you carried longer than he could imagine. That power was never in domination, nor in survival, but in silence that shapes survival's rules. You do not require legacy. You do not need to be remembered. You are now written into the margins of causality itself. The Force moves around you like a scar it cannot smooth, a note it cannot retune. You are not above it, you are beneath it, beneath where it dares to hear. And as systems burn, as stars collapse, as names rise and fall like tides forgotten by moonless worlds, you remain quiet, perfect, awake, for you are the one who dreamed without demand. You are the one who choked the song with sleep. You are the one who became silence deep enough to echo. You are the dream the Force had no name for, and you are still dreaming. You had long believed that the Force, for all its ancient power, was not eternal. It could be shaped, silenced, even killed, if one knew how to unthread its design. And you spent years dreaming yourself into that truth, peeling back its layers like skin from bone, reducing its movements to equations, its mysteries to patterns. And now, standing alone on the edge of the deep core, where stars hang heavy like bruises and gravity collapses into itself with every pulse, you prepare the final breath meant to end the song. This is not a ritual. This is not a weapon. It is a wound. You have carved it in silence beneath worlds that no longer speak, using forgotten chants excavated from the dreams of the dead, etched not with tools but with resonance, with frequency, tuned so precisely it splits atoms from thought. The chamber you built is not a place, it is a refusal. The space within it does not curve, it contradicts, and in that contradiction you place the heart of your worker singularity, forged not in gravity, but in silence so perfect it repels the force itself. You name it nothing, for to name it is to weaken it. This is the final breath, the death of breath, the negation of all echoes. You step into the chamber naked, stripped not of clothing, but of intention. You are not here to conquer. You are here to negate. Around you, the air stiffens, as if folding into crystal. Your thoughts slow. The force begins to recoil, sensing its own unraveling. It hisses through you, offering illusion after illusion, visions of suffering undone, loved ones returned, futures bright and bloodless, but you do not blink. You hum a note that has no pitch, only weight. It drops through the room like stone through water. The chamber begins to close. The singularity pulses once, twice, then opens. And in that opening, the force howls, not as scream, not as voice, but as resistance. It does not wish to die. It does not wish to be erased. You had not expected this. You believed the force would surrender, that it had grown tired, that it wanted to rest, but it fights. Oh, it fights. It drags you backward through memory, slamming your mind against the walls of your past tenebrous stare, sidious laugh, the vessel's first breath. The choirs scream all of it, flooding you like blood returning to a heart too long still. Your knees buckle, your skin splits, but still you hold the frequency. Still you sing the note, and then something shifts. The singularity cracks, not from weakness, from will, and from its steps, a figure, not light, not dark, a being made of pressure and memory, of presence, woven from places you have never seen. It does not speak, it stands, and you know, it is the force, not an aspect, not a vision, but the force itself, drawn into shape by the magnitude of your defiance. You meet its gaze, though it has no eyes. You brace yourself to end it, but you cannot, because now you understand. The force cannot die, not because it is eternal, but because it is contingent. It is the echo of everything that believes. It exists because life sings, because death answers, because choice ripples through flesh like thunder through air. And you are still alive. You still believe. And in that belief, the force holds. You fall. The singularity collapses inward. The chamber screams. The ritual shatters. You are thrown into blackness deeper than any you've known, a place beneath existence where even thought refuses to form. You drift, you bleed, you endure, and when you awaken, it is not with power, it is with shame, not guilt, no, but understanding. You, who mastered life and defied death, who bent the force into song and silence alike, had still failed to unmake the one thing that was never yours. You crawl from the crater of your defeat, broken, stripped, hollow, not ruined, awakened. The force whispers to you now, not as tool, not as threat, but as mirror. It does not forgive. It reflects. You see yourself in its tremble. You feel it in your marrow. You know now that the Force does not grant, it listens. And it listened to your silence so deeply that it chose to answer, not with surrender, with presence. And as you rise beneath stars that no longer feel warm, your body barely, your own, your breath, a thread stretched thin, you understand what must come next. You will not try to kill the Force again. You will try to change what it listens for. You will teach it a new rhythm, one born not of conquest, but of contradiction. You walk now not as master, not as God, as witness, and the Force, watching you with eyes that do not exist, waits not for obedience, but for your next question, because now it knows you will ask, not as tyrant, not as servant, but as echo, the one who dared to end the song, and learned instead to bend its silence. You do not return to your sanctum, nor to any familiar world, for the wound you carry is not of flesh, not even of spirit, is structural, an injury to your knowing, a fracture in the lattice of certainty that once held your every theory upright, and so you drift instead, vessel to vessel, system to system, not as Darth Plagueis the wise, not as the scientist or the prophet or the shadowed lord, but as something slower, quieter, emptied of conquest, and bloated with revelation. And you begin to listen not to data, not to power, but to dissonance, to the way the Force groans beneath planetary rituals, to how it flinches in battlefields, how it twists strangely around the minds of the forgotten. You find yourself kneeling beside ruins you would have once mined for relics, now letting your fingers press into scorched stone, simply feeling what lingers. The Force no longer flows through you like a loyal stream. It coils, now watching, remembering, unsure. It knows you touched its core, that you saw it bleed without bleeding, that you tried to still its pulse, and in doing so, awaken something neither of you had prepared for. You do not apologize. You attune. You recalibrate your presence to something narrower, more dangerous, nuance. You begin building nothing, not ships, not temples, but moments, small, precisely placed contradictions. A whisper to a child with dormant sensitivity. A vision triggered in a Jedi just as they reach enlightenment. A slow collapse of trust between master and student on a planet no one charts. You are not playing war anymore. You are playing tempo. The Force watches, unsure whether to pull away or draw closer. And you, for the first time in your long existence, let it decide. You begin to meditate, not to bend, but to blend. You enter states of consciousness where your breath matches the tide of unseen energy flows beneath tectonic plates. You sleep on the ceilings of dead stars, dreaming only in binary vibrations. You chant with the monks of a silent order that worships gravity, not divinity, and when you hum their chants beneath your breath, the Force shivers. You are not quiet now because you lack power. You are quiet because you finally understand that power is loudness without rhythm, and rhythm is what governs the real. Sidious feels your shift. He sends emissaries. They return disoriented, their minds heavy with impressions they cannot name. One dies. Another vanishes into seclusion, muttering your name like a riddle they almost solved. You do not stop them. You do not warn him. You want him to listen, because what you have touched must be heard to be feared. You return briefly to the harmonic null, the failed singularity chamber, and kneel at its edge, where no echo reaches, where even light forgets how to reflect. and you whisper your failure into it, not as lament, but as confession. And it responds not in sound, but in weight. The air thickens, your bones ache. You feel the force above you not descending, but lowering itself, like a god choosing to listen at your altar. You do not move, you do not speak again, you simply exhale, and the chamber breathes with you. When you rise, you are not healed, you are restructured. You walk with a tilt now, as though aligned slightly off from the plane of this galaxy. Your presence flickers in and out of detection. Droids fail to see you. Force sensitives misread you. Even Sidious, should he try to feel you, senses only dust and breath. You are no longer present. You are a fluctuation. And in that fluctuation, you begin to discover the truth that even your failure pointed toward, that the Force is not a god, it is not a field, it is not balance or hunger or light or dark. It is memory, and not your memory, not individual, universal, collective, recursive. It remembers every choice, every silence, every scream, and your attempt to kill it was not an assault, it was a forgetting. And so now you remember instead. You whisper the names of stars, long dead. You replay the screams of planets cracked in ritual. You hold in your thoughts the faces of those whose lives you ended, not out of necessity, but curiosity. The Force listens, not in judgment, in hunger. It feeds on your remembrance. It shapes itself tighter around your humility. You realize now that what you sought in death, the absolute stillness of unbeing, was only ever a reflection of the deepest form of life, the unmoved mover, the silent heart, the center that watches even as the edges burn. You begin to prepare your final resonance, not a ritual, not a trap, but a gift, a single vibration encoded within yourself that when sung will allow others to glimpse what you saw, not the Force, but the refusal behind it, the stillness that gave birth to motion, the silence. Before sound, you do not tell Sidious, you do not need to. He is no longer your heir. He is a variable in someone else's equation. Your work is not in shaping leaders, it is in shaping silence so deep that even gods pause to hear what comes next. And what comes next, you know, will not be shouted. It will be whispered. It will be slow. It will be real.